Hello and welcome to a Christmas edition of Inside the FLX. I'm Josh Durso, and as always, we are coming to you from the FingerLakes1.com studio in downtown Seneca Falls. Today's show is all about coworking, and specifically a venture in Geneva called Port 100 that confuses a lot of people. They don't quite understand what it is. Chris Cooley, George Gonzalez, and Maureen Ballatori join us here to talk about Port 100 and, more importantly, what coworking is all about. Guys, thanks a lot for coming in today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into the nuts and bolts of what co-working is, if we could just quickly go around the room, starting with you, Chris. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, how you got into the co-working space, and what sort of brings you to this point.
Yeah, sure thing. So 12 years ago, I started a branding and design company in Geneva. I'm originally from Geneva. And so I worked for Cornell University for a little while and then got laid off, actually. So I started doing my own thing and realized very quickly that I could not work out of my home apartment office, right? So I started looking around. I was actually at an incubator in Geneva, very different thing than co-working. But the quick version is I was looking for a place of like-minded people that I could get support, right, and build my business and grow. And I went to a bunch of different spaces. So I've spent about the last 8 years in different shared offices, incubator. I was actually at a co-working space that failed in Rochester. I have since moved my company to Rochester and myself to Rochester. But yeah, I got really involved in the co-working space and saw some fail, traveled around, visited places all over the world, co-working spaces. And about 2 years ago, I had an opportunity. The one I was at in Rochester, they closed down, and a colleague of mine said, "Hey, have you checked out this Carlson building, which is 800,000 square feet?" And I said no, and I walked in and said, "Sign me up." Yeah. Because I had seen the possibility for co-working. I had also seen it not be executed in a way that was beneficial for myself and for the other people there. And that piece is community, a real conscious effort to create a community first and not just throw a space together and put people in it. So I've been I'm part of this project, working with the city of Geneva, and I've just been an advisor. So that's my role. I've been really involved and formed relationships with these two and quite a few other people.
Now, Michael, you are sort of you also are on the organizational side in some ways, but you're also a participant.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your role within the whole machine.
Well, in June is when the discussions started. Chris was meeting with the city to sort of hatch this idea with the property owner. And I was pulled in, I think because of my work with an organization I run called the Finger Lakes Independent Music Association. And I think I was brought in as someone with experience for building community and connecting individuals and in that arena through the arts, but the same idea. So in June, we would meet every other week or so and just from forming the ideas based on Chris's experience with setting up other co-works and things, and have members from the City of Geneva staff and other business owners and business leaders from Geneva area to figure out how we're going to do this. And through the course of those meetings, it just always it started to shift where it'd be like, well, what do you think, Michael? And an idea would pop up, and it just kind of emerged as kind of a leadership role in that, and I guess it seemed like a natural fit for me to kind of move into the space and become a member, but also help shape the culture of the community that we're building in there together.
Now, Maureen, you are a member, correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the nuts and roots here.
Sure. So I came to the initial planning meetings just to kind of check it out and learning more about what the goals were that the group that had planned the organization were. I knew immediately that it was going to be a good fit for me. So I've spent the last 10 years working in traditional corporate environments where, you have to be there at a certain time. I'm a graphic designer, so everything I do is on the computer. I do strategy, marketing, and design for small businesses as one of the many hats I wear.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I wanted to be able to do that from wherever and, run my own schedule. So, coming to the planning meetings, just the initial ones where they brought together the interested parties was when I knew that it was going to be, something that I wanted to do. And I find myself there a little bit more than most of the other folks. And I love it. The space is comfortable. It's in a great location. The people that are there that are in and out all the time are friendly and helpful and wonderful. And I mean, the community is the most important aspect of Port 100.
So, okay, that's a nice segue. Thank you very much. There are a lot of people out there who are still probably really confused about this co-working / Port 100 concept. It's happening all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, if you could walk us through sort of what co-working is and then how that relates to what Port 100 is in Geneva.
Sure. Yeah, so co-working in its most basic form is individuals, entrepreneurs, work from home professionals, and there's this awesome class of people called digital nomads, right? Mm-hmm. So they just travel around, they can work from anywhere. And the basic version is that these people all share amenities. It's cheap space, like Port 100's $150 a month, no long-term commitment. So you can try it out and test it, or you can be there for a long time if you want. That's the most basic version. Now, it's not an incubator, okay? An incubator is a very regimented schedule. You have to apply to be at an incubator, and then you have to go through a business plan and all this. Co-working is very organic, right? So you have your own company. It's the shared space and the shared community that's really the big benefit. It's also not a co-op, so people who are part of a co-op, they're all bought in. Mm-hmm. They don't rent the space. They are all financially backing the space. So I want to make the clear differentiation because there are many different types of shared environments. Mm-hmm. But the community thing is key, right? We were talking a little bit before we went on air. There's really two different types of co-working models, and the one that's real estate based is, and I'll say it again, it's like a gym membership, right? You have 100 available memberships, you sell 300, and hope that everyone doesn't show up at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. The other version, which we've established at Port 100, and through my experience with building Carlson Co-work in Rochester, is it's about the people. And Maureen mentioned, having these preliminary meetings, seeing who's involved. Like, there are multiple hoops that you have to jump through to become a member of this space. Like, there's only 12 spots there, so we're very careful about who's there and make sure that it's a good fit, right? Does that help?
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Now, specifically in Geneva, what was obviously Matt Horn, city manager, played a huge role in making this happen. But what was the sort of inspiration in Geneva for a co-working venture? Because it isn't something that has been done before in the Finger Lakes, in our neck of the woods anyway. Yeah. So what was sort of the move through on that?
Well, I'm not going to speak solely for Matt. Right? I'll have to let him do that. Mm-hmm. But what's really interesting is originally it was designed to be an economic development driver. There was supposed to be food and incubator style development happening at Port 100. Well, once he reached out to me and came and saw the co-work in Rochester, he started to lean a little bit more toward, hey, this is a real community effort. And that's obviously my own personal philosophy as well, because I've seen it work and I've seen it not work. So I've seen the community version work and the real estate model not work, right? So anyway, it started to take a little bit of a shift. It's still very much about economic development in Geneva, but now we've got people coming in from Phelps and Penn Yan, and they're looking for that space in that community versus, hey, I'm just going to build my business out of here and graduate to a whole other space. Because in an incubator, the design is to have you graduate out, where this community is built to be more organic and flexible and connected.
Right. But people can all still grow together. And that's the cool thing about it, at least so far in the experience that I've had, is that it seems like you've got all of these people. I mean, someone mentioned a little bit about shared resources. So you've got all these individual people that are essentially trying to do the same thing. Everyone's trying to grow their business and, do better in one way or another, whether that's serve more people, make more money, whatever it is. And so being in a space where you've got all those like-minded people, it's the best way to have it. I mean, it's cool.
There's the other aspect of it, which is the affordability for an individual who is trying to start something up themselves or is just actively doing something themselves. As participants, I'm going to go to you two on this one. How has the experience been thus far? Obviously, still very early in the staging, and it isn't completely filled yet. There are still spaces available, correct?
Yep.
So, what has that experience been like thus far?
In terms of
how it's for yourself and your business, how has that sort of experience been for you personally?
So, I was very newly self-employed before I found Port 100 and came to that space. So I think as the typical self-employed, I was working out of my house. When I needed that socialization, I was at the coffee shop. So this was the natural next step for me. And so the relationships that I've made, the people that I've met just in the last, we've been open for 2 months, just in the last 2 months has been incredible for my own business, both of them, to be able to grow them in ways that without the people and network that I've made, I don't think would have happened, if I was still working out of my house in my local coffee shop.
Now, we talked a little bit about this beforehand, but the aspect of sort of moving away from the traditional brick and mortar, is this something that you guys think could be duplicated in other places with relatively simple, sort of building blocks if you have the community aspect?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's actually part of what I'm pursuing moving forward is there is a formula and a step process that I've used to help build two successful co-working spaces. I've actually had people reach out to me and say, how do you do this, right? Or even co-work creators, and this is from a national and international level. I was just talking to a woman last week from rural Washington State, so around Seattle, right? Yeah. And she's like, what do I do? I feel so siloed, which to me was the complete opposite. It made no sense because what we're doing is encouraging people to have horizontal growth, right? And experience things together. Yet the co-work creators are feeling isolated in creating a co-working space. So that's one of the things that I'm doing personally is starting to connect people as a co-work manager and co-work creator resource. But to answer your question, yes, I believe and have seen this work already.
Okay. So you just reminded me of something. Is there pushback of any kind against something like this, or is it met with pretty much open arms and people are just good?
Overwhelmingly, people are supportive. It's about educating. So, I appreciate this whole conversation right now because it's explaining to people the benefits of this. It's funny. I was on Evan Dawson's radio show, right? Yep. And there was a report that he read of a woman who was at a co-working space. It was actually a corporate environment. They're doing the open space model. And it's like, this is the worst thing ever, right? But for some people, that type of environment, and I think in a corporate model, pushing people to be in that environment is very detrimental, like saying you have to be this way. Because some people enjoy that regimented work day. What we're saying is this is available. It might not be for everybody, but that's also part of the reason why we say, come to a couple meetings, test it out, get a membership for a month, and if it doesn't work, no hard feelings, right? But yeah, it'll work anywhere. And I will tell you that 40% of the U.S. workforce is going to be contract workers by the year 2020. Yeah. So everyone that's listening to this and everyone that's a part of this conversation is going to be working with one of the three people I mentioned earlier in this, right? The entrepreneur, the digital nomad, the work from home professional, or you are one, right? So it's inevitable, and it just makes sense the future of work, really.
Now, Michael, I wanted to get your take on the growth aspect in Geneva that sort of happened while all of this. So this, I would say, Port 100 is happened this year, but there's been a lot of growth over the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years in Geneva that seems to have set up for this really well. Have you seen that? Do you agree, disagree? Do you sort of see it differently, or is this just the beginning?
No, I do agree, and I think, I mean, growth is one way to put it, but there's really an awakening in people's perception of what possibilities there can be. I think that there's, Geneva's been, for a long time, was trying to find itself with, it had this identity of the base that was on Seneca Lake, and then the foundry, and those were the foundations of what really established that city. And I think when those institutions were gone, there was years just trying to figure out what Geneva's identity would be. And there's a combination of newcomers that have come to Geneva to enhance the community, and then people like me that moved away, lived other places, and there's this contingency of people that are 30s and 40s that have come back home, right? And ready to embrace where they're from, share what they've experienced out there. And that has happened at a perfect time when there was some new leadership on in the local government level, and different just openness to other ways, right?
Open to change.
Yeah. And I think like Port 100 is a shining example of that. And that's what's been so exciting, even for myself. I moved back to be close to family, and I lived in Washington State, Seattle area for a long time. And for me, it was to spend all those years there in such a progressive place, such a forward-thinking place. There was a part of me, I had inhibitions about coming back to small town, Finger Lakes, America,
Right.
And it's been a thrill to see all that has been taking place, but then to be, you asked earlier, how this has affected us. At first, I've been self-employed for maybe a decade or so, a little more. And the first thing I noticed about Port 100 there is just that community ideal and just it's something that simply you take for granted when you have more of a normal brick and mortar job, as we're putting it, that just saying, hey, how's it going? Or have a good night, But outside of that, because it is this new ripple that's rolling through town, I'm getting people that stop me all the time. What's going on with that? And sort of are willing to lean on me for what my insights are about it, but also the larger picture of Geneva, and I embrace that role. I think it's great to be part of a discussion that's about openness and new ideas, and that change doesn't have to be scary. It can really be inspiring and create opportunity on all levels, for old people, young people, newcomers, and people that have been here their whole life.
Okay, so that was another one of the items this isn't just millennials, right? This is, I think that the perception of this is going to be that it's just a lot of young people, crazy young people, whippersnappers, if you will, sitting in a building trying to make a living at something that isn't really working. And that's not the case, because you just talked about bringing back 30s and 40s who are sort of coming back home and wanting to do what they've been trained to do. So speak to a little bit about, if any of you can, what types of people and businesses and sort of industries are involved in this space.
I think Chris is probably the best person to answer that question, but kind of just to build off of what Michael was just saying and that question a little bit. I met 2 weeks ago with George Gonzalez, who is a resource for anyone with a business within the city limits of Rochester, to help with. He helps with business strategy, business plans, that kind of thing. So I met with him a couple weeks ago about my businesses and kind of strategic direction and that stuff. And along the lines of what Michael is saying is one of the things that he mentioned that is such a strong point for Geneva and what the government has done to revitalize the town and everything is that you've got people who have moved away and learned new things and come back and brought that diverse thought and those diverse ideas and, otherworldly, other town, ideas back to Geneva to help Geneva grow as a community and as a space. Mm-hmm. So just to kind of throw that out there to connect those ideas a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that as human beings, we are designed to be collaborative, right? So this appeals to almost everyone, right? In some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. The industries that this is available to or that are a good fit, I say it's anyone. Mm-hmm. It's a like-mindedness, right? When you walk in, you feel like you're going to be part of something. That's the important theme. At the Carlson Cowork in Rochester, I would say that our average age, member age, is probably in the early to mid 40s. Mm-hmm. Because what's happening, and I talk about this trend in the future of work, 40% of people being contract, that's a huge number of the workforce, right? So it's not just millennials. Yeah. Everyone's starting to work in this capacity of remote work, and also people who are more like, I'd say like my parents' generation, next generation up, they're starting to see the quality of life that it brings and go, man, I worked that job for 30 years, but I'm still at an age where I can have a business or be connected, and so it's inspiring to an older group of people as well. But Michael's a great case, man. Like he left, he went to a more progressive area, and came back for family, and we're hearing that story a lot more often. But now people are coming back, and Maureen's a great example of that. Working from your house, it's like, where are the amenities that I need to grow myself, my business, and personally too, right? Like,
and all those things that seem so great about working out of your house too. Oh, I don't have to travel. I've got my coffee and my snacks and stuff right there. That was great for like a month or two before I was like, good God, I need to get out of this house. Yeah. And so it's the perfect next step up out of your working from your dining room table or working from.
It seems like a balance.
The next thing, yeah.
Like you guys are sort of describing what to me seems like a balance between this traditional brick and mortar and this you're just working from home, grinding it out yourself, where you're sort of finding the middle ground in a not overly expensive way. So for the people who are interested, what's the availability look like right now? Obviously, you guys are opened up and some are already working out of the Castle. You guys are on Castle Street, correct? So what's the availability and what's the cost that goes along with it? If you could just run through that for our viewers and listeners.
Michael, do you want to?
So we're about at half occupancy, so we've got 6 memberships. So for $150 a month, and it's month to month, and the idea, again, with this community model is that somebody can sign up to be a member. They might decide it's not a good fit for them, or the community might decide, hey, it's not a good fit for us, right? And so it gives an opportunity for someone to try it out, right? Amenities, you get a dedicated workstation, a desk with some shelving. There's common areas. There's a galley with basic appliances, a large table there that could be used for meetings or just for luncheon, whatever. We also, because we're in the business improvement district, where all members are automatically get membership with the BID in Geneva, so we get access to their services, and they have a large conference room and teleconference technology that we have access to. So that's where we are as far as availability and membership. We're also, the city and Hobart William Smith Colleges is also running a competition right now. In the interest of diversity, we're trying to get members that are from the Black and Latino community. So there's an active competition looking to basically sponsor a membership for a year.
That's awesome.
So it's important to get that out there too. Slight sidetrack to your point of your whippersnapper comment. I think what we've all described so far about co-working is a valuable lesson that's community-wide.
Yeah.
If we've learned nothing from this last election cycle, that there's huge divisions on all levels of our society. And so just as it's important that a graphic designer could collaborate with a real estate lawyer, to reference two of our members, that's also, a millennial could learn something from a retired person, right? Or a middle-aged person could learn something from someone in their late 20s, early 30s. And I think that that's part of the lesson that everyone can learn from a co-working model, whether they're members or not, right? We can take that with us in our everyday lives.
Yeah, those diverse ideas are one of the unique things about the community aspect of co-working that makes it so successful. Is you can bounce ideas off of someone who's going to have a different opinion from you, or maybe they don't, but it helps you get those new perspectives to make your ideas and your business better than it could have been before.
Yeah, and in really dense population centers, so larger cities like New York, a lot of the co-works are actually specific to a certain industry, which is great if you have a specific question. But what we're finding in a more rural setting is you don't have the foot traffic, so you don't have a daily desk option. That also means that people are more involved in the community because the month membership, that's another reason why we have month-long memberships, is that somebody might come in thinking they just need amenities. Well, 2 weeks later, they're like, wow, this is amazing. I met so many people, right? So that's important as well, I think, to know,
Now, can they, if for people who are looking to take that next step with you guys, can they go through your website? Is there a phone number they should call, or what is the best method?
Yeah, I would definitely go to port100cowork.com.
Okay.
Or send me an email, info@port100cowork.com.
Okay. All right. Really appreciate you guys stopping by, and best of luck with everything up there. I'm sure it'll be really, really successful.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So that's going to do it for us today. As a note to our listeners, we will be coming back in January with a full slate of shows to kick off 2017. Jackie Augustine will be our guest on January 5th. Joelle Marie Karsten will join us on January 12th. And former Auburn Mayor Melina Carnicelli will join us live in studio on January 19th. Inside the FLX airs Sundays at 7 p.m. on Time Warner Cable Channel 12. And, of course, the podcast is always available on iTunes, Stitcher, and the FingerLakes1.com app. For Chris, Michael, and Maureen, I'm Josh Durso, inviting you to join us next time on another edition of Inside the FLX. Merry Christmas.